Hello, Yes But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. Welcome to Yes But Why, episode 236, my conversation with comedian Alex Velluto. But first, a bit about our sponsors. This episode of Yes But Why podcast is sponsored by Audible. You can get your free audiobook download and your 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. It's saving me some of these days. Audible is available for your iPhone, Android, or Kindle. Download your free audiobook today at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. This episode of Yes But Why is also sponsored by podcastcadet.com. Podcast Cadet is dedicated to helping you build your podcast. We will connect you to the resources you'll need to get better and better with each and every episode. Swing on by podcastcadet.com to get help for all your podcasting needs. Let us know you heard about us from Yes But Why, and you'll get 20% off the workshop or service you buy. This week on Yes But Why, we talk to stand-up comedian Alex Velluto. With millions of online views, Alex has performed in the top comedy clubs across the country in over 60 cities as a member of the Dry Bar Comedy Tour. Listen in as we chat about idolizing Jerry Seinfeld, touring with Dry Bar Comedy, and performing at the YBY Comedy Club in Salt Lake City. To support Alex and his comedy right now, check out his podcast, Free Lunch with Alex Velluto. I now present to you Yes But Why, episode 236, Alex Velluto on how to become a comedian. Enjoy! I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes But Why podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid just being fascinated with comedy all the time, and I would, like, back in those days, I didn't have internet at my house, so I went to the library to look up, like, how comedians became comedians. And I remember reading this article about, like, the different genres of comedy. Like, they're like, Tim Allen is a sound effects comedian, and Jerry Seinfeld is an observational comedian. And it was all these weird things that don't actually exist. And I read about, like, keeping ideas in a notebook. So I would always do that as a kid. I would, like, write joke ideas in a notebook. And then in, like, I think it was 10th grade, I took a creative writing class, and we had a poetry slam. And I essentially just did stand-up jokes that I had written in this idea notebook for the poetry slam. And I can't remember what they were.
Sure.
But they couldn't have been good, so I'll probably plead the fifth on that front. But
I like the idea that it's in a poetry slam, though, because the only poetry slams I've ever seen are when people, they talk like this, and they involve you in the tone of their voice. So yeah. I like the idea that you're, like, telling these jokes with this weird...
poetry slams are basically the same thing. Like, a lot of comics now are just doing their material in John Mulaney poetry slam voice. Myself included. I love John Mulaney. But it's just their material with this weird affect.
I don't think what he's got going for him is going to work for everybody. There's something weird and special about him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's like one of those comics that, like, creates a generation of comics that other people hate, I think. I think he'll be the next one. Like, it was Mitch Hedberg copycats for a while. George Carlin copycats are still around, and they're annoying. Yeah. So he's going to be my generation of comedy copycat thing.
Oh, wow.
I love him, and I do try not to fall too far into just straight up copying him. He's amazing.
What were the comedians that you were listening to and emulating when you were a kid in 10th grade? It wasn't John Mulaney, right? You're not that young.
No.
Okay, cool.
So I'm in Utah, so the only comedians that I knew of were like Seinfeld, Brian Regan, and Jim Gaffigan.
Pretty good ones.
I remember learning about Jim Gaffigan like junior year of high school. So that's how long it took Jim Gaffigan to get to Utah. And then I went to see Jerry Seinfeld perform at a theater in Salt Lake City, and that was like my first time at a comedy show, live show.
How was that?
Yeah. It was cool. I went by myself because tickets are so expensive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go, but my parents said it was too expensive for them to go to. So I got it was my birthday present from one of my aunts. And I spent the birthday money on a Seinfeld ticket, went by myself and sat like sixth row. And it was incredible. I loved it.
Oh,
like my first comedy show was that.
Wow.
And then I remember my mom that was my first live comedy show or concert.
Seinfeld by yourself.
Yes. I'd never been to a live performance before that.
Wow.
Like no concert, no comedy show, anything like that on a big scale.
I guess clearly it held up, or else you wouldn't be doing it for a career.
Yeah. And I still like him. And a lot of his stuff from the sitcom doesn't hold up, but I do really resonate a lot with like his comedy philosophy still. And his philosophy is very interesting of like the joke is above everything else, including emotion or like meaning or things like that.
Yeah.
Very like Zen, almost Zen Buddhist, which you can tell the influences from his like transcendental meditation practice he does and everything.
Oh. You know a lot more about Jerry Seinfeld than I do.
Yeah, did you know he did transcendental meditation?
I didn't know that. I know that's what all the rich people are doing now. I hope it helps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does.
I feel like it's hard.
Do you want to know Seinfeld history? This is a weird tangent, but
it's okay.
He started doing meditation in college, like before he started stand-up. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to develop a good like meditation practice every day. So essentially Jerry Seinfeld got mentally healthy starting in college before stand-up. And then now he's like uber successful and says you don't have to have a mental illness in order to be funny. You don't have to be miserable to be funny. That's like one of the tenets of his philosophy. But I'm also like, dude, you got mentally healthy with the meditation without knowing it, that was going to help you so much. And that like carried you through all this stuff.
Yeah. Anyway. I mean, you're right. He definitely had a roller coaster experience as far as like going from being a road comic to all of a sudden doing this show that becomes a huge hit. And now all of a sudden he's like, can't leave his house. And he like, people are all over him. Like, from what I understand, he's not a big fan of people running up. He'll talk to people occasionally. You see that on the coffee podcast show. You know what I mean? He's like, okay, it's a sort of weird experience, but he has to deal with it. So it's great that he has that meditation to be able to navigate it. I feel like it also made him like wise old man before he was old. You know what I mean? Like, so he could be like, it's okay. We're just going to go with the flow of this. Like, and people are like, all right, man, whatever. Like, he's such a weirdo, but really he's like calm and easygoing. It's like Gary Shandling. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like finding out that he's so like involved in this like spiritual journey was like Oh, man,
yeah.
that really it just makes
He was Zen Buddhist
everything
also,
so,
which I don't think
yeah.
transcendental meditation is Zen Buddhism, but
No.
you can see where they share a lot of similarities. And him and Gary Shandling are buddies.
I'm going to say that my only concern about transcendental meditation is that it's very expensive to take one of those classes.
You don't need
and I feel
the,
like that's
secret.
Yeah.
Nah.
There's something like only rich people are allowed to experience this because I guess that's what's going on. And I just don't love that. So that can be rough. But let's get back to you. You were a child and you were seeing Seinfeld and it was a great experience. I've never thought of going to a comedy show by myself. I mean, I guess I have plenty of times, but I just never thought of it. I've never gone to like a famous comedian. I've gone to lots of people to their comedy shows by myself, and it's a pleasant experience because you don't have to worry if your friend likes or dislikes the comedy. You're just there for yourself, which is fun. But tell me more about how you continued to do it through high school and college. How did you actually finally get yourself up on stage?
So I went to that show, and then my mom took me to another show that was at like a Baptist church or something. These like local Christian comics put it on. And I remember that there was like a jazz trio there playing music before the show, and there were Cocktail Franks and a comedy show at this church. And I still know these comics, and I love them. They're great people. But I also remember thinking at that show, like, I had just come from the Seinfeld show, and I'm watching them. I'm thinking, oh, not all comedy is like that level of Seinfeld. But they did tell me about open mic, which was a good thing. And I didn't even know open mic was a thing. It wasn't in my Alta Vista search that I did at the library.
Alta
Vista. Open mic existed. Yeah. So I went to YBY is the local club in Utah, and I went to YBY open mics like off and on during high school and college. Well, off and on during high school, and then I kind of picked it up more near the end of college consistently.
You stopped doing performance during college to focus on studying the marketing pretty heavy?
Yeah, and I went on like a church mission for my church. One of those.
You did that?
Yeah.
How was that? Did you go somewhere wild?
It was. Yeah, I went to Paraguay.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. I just found out today, someone was mentioning this. So I was in this area in Paraguay that's like the biggest black market in the world. And they had told me that when I was there. But it's like Grand Theft Auto in real life. And I'm like this little sheltered, white-shirted kid in like the Grand Theft Auto place. And someone was telling me today, after 9/11 happened, one of the first places they looked was in this city in Paraguay for like the terrorist organization, because unbeknownst to me while I was there on a mission, they have like, it's not just like black market TVs and fake Rolexes. They have like F-16s that they sell on the black market, like nuclear arms dealers and stuff. I'm like, what? I could have been wheeling and dealing as a little Mormon missionary, trying to infiltrate the black market instead of doing whatever jaded thing I was doing at the time.
It's cool. It's correct. You could have just been like Jonah Hill, who was selling the guns and running all around and making millions of dollars until they find out that you're a 20-something young man. And they're like, wait, what?
And I feel cheated now. All I got out of it for a souvenir was like a fake Rolex that I had somewhere. I could have gotten like...
You don't know that was fake. That could have been real.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything was stolen.
Fell apart immediately. So I'd hope the good people at Rolex have a better sense of quality. Even there, they were funny about that stuff. They would just openly say it. They wouldn't say it was fake, but they would say it's like a replica.
Sure.
That was their way around it. Like, would you like a replica of a Rolex?
Sure. Well, it's like the fake purses in like New York City. 2 years off, huh? Wow.
Yeah,
it was a full
so
2
I didn't
years.
do comedy, but I would still think of jokes while I was on my mission and stuff. And then I kind of got back into it a little after.
You got a lot of good Paraguay material?
Not really. I just found out that thing about the black market city today, though, so maybe I'll talk about that.
It's a good one. It's a good one. The restaurant that when I moved to Austin, I've lived here for 10 years. When I moved to Austin, I found a Mexican restaurant that I liked, and I just started going there all the time because I was like, I'm just going to keep going back to this same place because it feels comfortable and it's like a fun spot. And whenever people would visit me, I would bring them there. And I really liked it, and I was always telling people they should go. And I was always really surprised that they were very, very empty all the time. But I continued to go there, and I figured maybe my guacamole was helping the business. And then shortly after I had lived in the city for a couple of years, the restaurant was shut down because it turned out to be a front for heroin. And they were just smuggling drugs and laundering money through this restaurant. And like me and 7 other people were the only ones that actually ate there. And I was like, oh, what? So I understand crime happening directly in front of you and you don't know. Happens to me. I'm very naive. Very naive. For sure.
I'm like fascinated with business to a certain degree, and that to me is almost more impressive than just running a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
You said the food was good.
It was good.
And they peddled the heroin fairly successfully until they got caught.
Right?
Like, that's impressive from a business standpoint.
Here's hoping that was one of the best paid chefs in town.
Oh, I know. But I've been to restaurants where the food is such shit that like you're like, well, these guys have got to be a front for the mob or something.
Oh.
But then like the place you went to, they had their shit together and they peddled the drugs.
Well,
so that's, I mean,
I don't know that they did it very well because they clearly got caught. It didn't work out for them. I believe they're probably in jail. But I was like, at the end of the day, they're not winning.
Yeah. Well, those are the only drug dealers you hear about are the ones that eventually get caught.
That's true.
The thing about getting big in the drug game is you're never known until after it's all over.
Yeah, drugs and art. A lot of things like that, you know.
Yep.
Who knew? Sometimes, you do a lot of paintings.
Yeah.
And then you die, and then everyone's like, hey, did you know that Larry was great at painting? Oh, my God. And then it's
I know.
It's $1 billion.
Do you ever think about, like, how pissed off Van Gogh would be?
Oh, my God, so
if
pissed
he found out how famous he was now?
He cut the other ear off. I'm telling you, he'd be...
Yeah, he'd be like, you pieces
pissed.
of shit. I, like, gave my whole life and energy to all this. And you like it after I die?
Now you like it? Could someone have said, hey, Vinny, good job once in my life? Seriously.
I know.
I was begging
like a
for attention.
Soul.
Begging for attention. Did you see the scream one? Did you see the one where I'm screaming on the bridge? I'm about to jump. That's what's happening. I'm trying to tell you. I'm reaching out. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder about all those things. Like, what was it I found out recently? Oh, Charles Dickens was famous in his own time. So, like, when Charles Dickens wrote cool things, people were like, oh, my God, Charlie, you're, like, the best. And he's like, you know what? I am. He, like, invented the book tour so that more people could tell him he was awesome. Like, I was like, what a funny detail. Like,
that's so funny. I'm so glad you told me that.
It's so great. Hilarious. It's like you think of Charles Dickens as being like super boring because of so many different things that seem like old school to us, but it's not old school. It's just his stuff is so ingrained into the world that like you take it as commonplace. It's like, no, bro wrote that. And at the time, people were like, that's amazing. Who's this guy? And he's like, let's get in this carriage and go town to town and tell everyone how amazing I am. And they did.
Yeah, that whole system of marketing was invented because of his ego.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
He really did. And he would like read his stories aloud, like, check this one out, everyone. It was like, for real. Like, and just the idea of that is so fascinating. It really also like puts into perspective, like going back and reading Charles Dickens things now makes them a little more exciting to imagine this guy like in a bookstore, like, all right, ladies, listen to this one. Like, just so funny. So funny. Because like, for instance, we were talking about the marketing and like how when you're a comedian, you have to be like every job. You have to do a great website, which by the way, you have a great website, and like good marketing, get yourself out there, make yourself connected, you know, doing all these kinds of things. Like, how is a person supposed to handle that? How is a person supposed to juggle all those things and their art? How do you do it?
Oh, I know. People, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. Because I feel like I'm doing all those other things, and then I'm like, when was the last time I wrote something? It's always like written in some feverish panic while I'm on stage. Like, I wish I had more time to sit down and think about things and write them out in a constructed way instead of worrying about sales funnels, Zoom recording connections, AV, technical stuff, website building, social media algorithms. Blah.
Yeah, it's a lot of crap that I had no interest in. I did not sign up to be a theater lady, so I knew how to press the buttons. I mean, don't get me wrong. Back in the day of my actually working theater, like in theater houses, I would press any button and pull any lever you wanted me to. To this day, I always tell it to my husband. I go, if I can get a job in the box office of a theater, I'll take it. I just want to be around the stuff, right? But at the same time, like, that doesn't mean I'm an expert at all the things. And that doesn't mean that, like, I don't know, I even have the wherewithal to get the information. Like, can I just tell you that I've asked hundreds of people to explain SEO to me, and I try so hard to soak it into my brain, and it does not work out. Every time I just go like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Totally. Oh my God, you totally helped me out. I have no idea. Alex, I have no you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many things
like,
where it's like,
speak in their language or else they won't like help you out with it.
Right. You have to give them like that reassuring smile so that they continue to talk. You're like, oh, yeah. Oh, I never thought of it that way. Oh my gosh, you're really blowing my mind.
So that's called guest posting, and they're like, that's actually link building. Shut up.
Great.
I'm a comedian. Let me write jokes.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like getting older. You know what I mean? Everything changes the name. You know what I mean? Like, from the tech guys to the younger people, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, what are we calling that now? Oh, okay. Great. Cool. Like, I've never felt more old than when I have to like ask what things mean on the internet. And I never ask out loud because I know they'll look at me and they'll laugh. So I have to send a private message to someone. I've seen this. Or I go and I Google the acronym, which, be careful, everyone. Be careful Googling the acronym. Is like, there's just a lot of acronyms. And some of them you don't want to get involved in your search bar, is all I'm saying. I feel like I've gotten off track. We were talking about
there's marketing acronyms and Urban Dictionary acronyms, and you gotta search for the right one.
And some of them are phrases that mean illegal activities that you just want to hear about, but it turns out you're not supposed to look them up. Like, I was on Facebook and somebody mentioned QAnon, and I was like, what's QAnon? Yeah. And they were like, I was like, should I Google it? And they were like, do not Google it. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, explain to me what it is. I don't know what this is. So, like, you know, Facebook occasionally is like, hello, I don't understand. Please tell me why. Which is nice. I have a handful of 40-somethings who will explain to me what the kids are talking about. I'm all like, hey, I need to look cool. What does this mean? which is helpful, But I feel like we've gotten off track and now suddenly we're talking about me. Let's talk more about you.
I like it. I like you. I want to know more about you, too.
Sure. No, that's nice.
That's fine.
I appreciate that. But I want to get back into your experiences starting out as a stand-up. You started going to the open mics. When did you start, booking your own shows? And how did you... I love the idea that when you wanted to be a comedian, you went to the library and Googled, or rather Alta Vista'd, how to become a comedian. And just the idea, like now I want to write multiple articles with that as the title, just like terrible, bad advice articles for future children.
I know. Well, someone's way ahead of you because that's the article I read. It had no mention of open mic, and it didn't even have like a mention of like how you eventually get on weekend shows. I just like went to open mic for like a year and a half or something, and which is fine. And I basically didn't interact with many people. I didn't know like that was a thing that was good to do. And I just went and I told jokes and I left, and I eventually started making a couple friends. And then like a year and a half later, the club owner came up to me and he's like, I'm only telling you this because it seems like you don't know what you're doing. But you can ask me for weekend shows, right? And I'm like, I didn't know that, and I appreciate you telling me because I in fact, have no idea what I'm doing. I got all my information off of a Alta Vista article.
John Alta Vista gave me bad advice. It's not good.
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh! So he helped you out, huh? The guy who was booking the shows
great.
at WiseGuys. That's great.
I'm still really, he's become a good friend of mine, and he's awesome. His name's Keith Stubbs, and like he really made the comedy scene here in Utah really great. Like most of the reason why it's anything, and I personally think it's good. It's very like underrated, flipped on place to do comedy. But
what's the scene like? Like now that you're in it and you're hanging with the people and you know all the places to go, how does it feel? What's it like?
It feels good. There's 3 clubs of WiseGuys, and you can do sets most weekends, and then the open mic is really good. And there's other open mics that are smaller, obviously, and like I used to go to more of those, but not so much anymore. And there's also that dry bar comedy thing here, which Keith books. He doesn't run he hadn't run the company. And he just booked it. And then I did one of those specials, and then after I filmed it, I was telling them about my marketing job and degree and kind of talking to them about it the same way I'm talking to you about how I dislike doing that. And they're like, well, just come do that marketing stuff here. So I ran their Facebook page for like 3 years. I got it when it had like a couple thousand followers, and then by the time I left, it was like up to like 4 million followers or something.
Wow.
So you're welcome, everyone. All the angry moms on the internet leaving horrible conservative comments on comedy videos is all because of me.
I mean, it's not all because of you. It's partially because of you.
I feel very guilty for that.
Conservative moms are angry about lots of things, and they're never going to stop being angry. I've learned that after joining the mom community. It's just sort of some people are angry, and they want to be angry about certain things. I'm angry, but more in a like cranky traffic way, less as a I'm going to yell at you about the way you live your life kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, Facebook really is like made for people who love yelling at things as they pass by. Just like if you're in traffic and a bunch of cars drove by you, we just yelled at each one, but each one was a different post.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what I think about you, comedy posts.
Yeah, but there's always so much more like involved to somebody's like response. You know what I mean? Like, the hard part about sort of political stuff right now is that there's a big mix of politics and morality where like people think that there not only are certain things that people are making jokes about, like a mark of that person's morality, but also the ability to laugh at something is somehow a bad mark on their own morality. And I'm like, you're not a bad person because you think something's funny, especially if it's off color or out of the ordinary. That's like kind of the point. Like we need to push the edges. And so some of us are in the position of, trying to, blur the lines and push the envelope. Like, that's just the idea. And also, like, especially in times like now in 2020, I remember like right before COVID, there was a big discussion about like, is comedy dead? Are we not allowed to ever make jokes again? And it was like, now I feel like we hit rock bottom of insanity happening in the world. So now comedy's back because comedy's the only thing that makes viable sense. Like, there's just, everyone's just like, I can't, please, someone make a meme so I can process this situation, right? Like, there's just no...
I know.
It's like...
Yeah, no one can trust the news sources. Like, we can all pick whatever news sources we want to believe in, and we, like, kind of create our own reality in that way. And then comedy kind of, like, can cut through all of that. That's a very astute observation about politics and morality.
Well, I'm certain I'm not the first person to come up with it. I'm sure I'm regurgitating some article I saw on Facebook. Let's be clear.
Oh, no.
But at the same time, like, there's definitely, it's hard when it comes to, I'm an artist through and through. Sounds like you are too. If you're like writing jokes as a little kid and then all of a sudden, you're seeing Seinfeld at like 15. There's something great about that, by the way. So great. Like, I'm deeply envious. My first concert was New Kids on the Block. It was a very different situation. But like, it's just, it's great to be able to do comedy and to be able to express yourself in this particular way because, especially right now, I feel like there's a need to discuss the way things have been and how we could change them. And sometimes the only way that you can do that is with there being some sort of fun person around. And the other part about comedy that people don't give, like, people say comedy and they immediately just think mean-spirited stand-up, which is a small subset of comedy as a whole, and even a smaller subset of stand-up. Like, they're not, there is a handful of people that are trying to be terrible, but not everybody, mostly not everybody, right? Like, they're not trying to make the world a bad place or make you angry. They're trying to uplift you or give you a break from a rough day. Hey, let me tell you about some things that I thought were funny, and maybe you'll laugh, and then you'll be able to relax and not worry about your job.
Yeah, that's a very pervasive like tenet of comedy, is like it is meant for as a break from reality, and in that way, like, we get to escape. There's like escapist kind of stuff, and then there's comedy that makes you want to like have to confront the issues of the day. And of course it like that kind of comedy presents those issues in kind of an absurdist bent to it. But like, I think both genres, if you want to call them that, are great. I'm a big fan of like both of those philosophies, like escaping it or confronting it. Like, it just depends on what you need,
Plus we're not all Joe Rogan. Like,
right.
Back to the idea that we were talking about way long ago, where it was like, how did he get that money? How did it work out? And why is everybody mad at him because you'd take $100 million too? Like, bro's just been saying what he got the most reaction for. if comedians learn nothing, and I'm glad that there were people in Utah to help you along the way. Hey, you can do this. Hey, you can do that. But as far as you writing jokes, developing jokes, it's a trial and error process. You tell the same joke over and over and over, and eventually you figure out the best way to do it, right? I feel like that's like, it's like that with life. And if you can embrace that, then great. But otherwise, it's just, you know, if you're just spitting out what you think people want you to say, you know what I mean? Like, without there being the artistry of you, then it gets a little hollow. But like with Joe Rogan, he just says what he knows his audience wants. And we can be mad at him or not, but really, he's a businessman. And it seems like he won. So
like,
we can be mad or whatever.
He's genuinely interested in those things, and so is his audience. So, like,
why not?
That's fine.
And he's a yeller. Great. Good. Whatever.
That's his version of slam poetry.
He loves it. He loves to yell.
The yelling kind.
Yeah. It's just the way he does it. He also apparently loves the color red, because that is the color that is all over his entire studio.
Yeah, it looks like he's in the inside of a toaster.
Yeah, and he's heating up. He likes it hot. That's why he moved to Texas. Hot, hot, hot. That's going to be the new theme song.
And I disagree with people that get upset at jokes, especially when they're like not in their finished form. Like, it's one thing to get upset at a joke at a special, because I feel like that's something that the artist like worked on, and like they're presenting it to you as like, okay, this is kind of finished. I've figured this out. This is what I believe. And then there's like people that get upset at jokes at comedy shows, whereas the nature of those are like, no, this is like, I'm workshopping this, and it's still entertaining to you, but this isn't finished yet.
Yeah, but getting mad at a comedian for a joke is like getting mad at a band because you don't like the song. I'm sorry you don't like the song. Yeah. The song you like will come up in a minute. Just hang back and sway with the rest of the crowd.
That band, like, that's not your genre of music.
You know what is also a thing that you can be that's acceptable? Not liking stuff. Sometimes that's just what happens.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's great.
Like, everything isn't catered for you. Yeah, it's like you don't have to like something. If you don't like it, go ahead and not like it. You don't have to yell at the person about how you don't like it. That's the thing that I think we were talking about, people yelling about, you know, reacting to things and being angry about comedy and whatnot. What I don't understand is, if you really would like, do you want there to be one type of everything? And do you want to have to agree with everybody? I just don't. I don't. I mean, you know, it's like when you say that about politics, people are like, so what you're saying is it's okay to be racist? And I was like, I don't know how we got there. But I think that when you disagree with people, it's not the end of the world. And when you don't like something, that's fine. My husband's favorite movie is The Highlander. Do I want to watch it? No. Do I ever want to watch it every time he asks me? No. Does that mean it's a bad movie inherently?
He's a good person.
No. And I don't dislike The Highlander or the people who made it or my husband who likes it. I just personally don't want to watch it. That's okay. Like what you like, and if you don't like it, move forward. No need to yell at that person. You're not something I like. That means you should change yourself. No, that's not really how that works. But thank you so much for your thoughts. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Tell me about your career path as it is. Our interview was booked by a manager of some kind, so that means that you are pretty well connected as far as having people who help you do tours and get gigs. Like, how did you get from I'm doing weekend shows at YBY to traveling, doing corporate gigs, all sorts of stuff?
You kind of have to like figure out how the business works, which like was also not in that Alta Vista article, and that just takes kind of some time and like experience. Like, I would like to have an official like one of the big agencies represent me at some point. But like, I know I've got to get to a point where they would want to do that. So in the meantime, I'm like, well, I can kind of delegate out some of those responsibilities to people that know how to do that thing. So I found a person that does podcast booking and hired them to help me get on podcasts. And I'm so glad I did, because I'm getting to know you and like talk to different people outside of my little bubble here. And it's really great.
You know, what's funny is that podcast interviews have really saved me during COVID. It's also really nice because I like to find out how everybody does it. And it's interesting. I don't know that I've ever talked to anybody in Utah, so I appreciate chatting with you, because I'm sure that, you know, people could listen to it from your area who maybe don't know what to do. And now they have a path because they heard your story and they're like, oh, I didn't know that this was something I could do. Great, let's do it. You know, we all have to, I'm trying my best to be that Alta Vista article and help comedians and performers and writers find their path. That's what this big podcast boom has been really helpful for, is like it's a lot of different Alta Vista articles with actual decent advice. But I don't want to come off like I've figured it out. I like feel very far from having figured it out. That's okay. I mean, we're all
I feel like our mutual friend Vanessa has figured it out way more, and I'm so happy for her. That's so cool.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. You have been an absolute joy. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to sharing your YouTube special with everybody.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, likewise. It's been so fun, and I'm so glad we know each other now. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to meet you, and I really appreciate you being on the show and chatting me up and telling me everything.
Oh, of course. Likewise. You're a real cool person. I'm glad I know you now.
Yeah, and a great connection. All right, here's my tiny child. He's appeared. Oh, look.
Okay.
Say hello,
I'll
Dalbus.
Talk to you later. Thank you. Uh-huh.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com, or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.